see, I don't know. I think that day we came up and visited with you was one of the pleasantest days I've had in the last decade.
I was most happy to have you.
It was really delightful.
That was breaking the ice with Columbia.
Amen, I'll tell you. And that building is so beautiful.
That's the most beautiful building at Columbia.
I think you're right. You told me that before I came, and I think you're absolutely right. We're going to want to let people know about that, if you don't mind. And welcome. Welcome very much to Conversation. It's a pleasure to welcome to the program for a second time Professor Maristella de Panizza Lorch. And she's a fixture, as it were, in the Columbia University scene and in the New York scene, I would say in the world cultural scene, having been a professor and of linguistics, had a very important role in terms of turning the Casa Italiana into what has been called the Italian Academy of Advanced Studies in America, a major cultural institution, again, gracing New York City, Columbia University, and the world. And she's also the author of a book we talked about in a previous program. Let's take a look at that. And it's called Mama and Her Village. It's a really interesting study of a historical significance in terms of understanding the South Tyrol and Italy, and she's got a very interesting story to tell, and we're very, very happy to welcome her to one time more to Conversation. Welcome very, very much, Marcel.
Thank you for inviting me again, and I thank you for coming to visit the Academy.
Oh, it was wonderful. One of the happiest days I've had in a long, long time, and what a handsome, beautiful building you have up there in the Academy, and I really welcome you to the program.
I really treasure your enthusiasm and the enthusiasm of Gloria and your staff and the staff here.
Well, we're going to let people...
It was a pleasure for me and to show you the Italian Academy and to have you take a look at Columbia.
Okay, we're going to get back to the book. We're going to talk about the book, some of your views of the world and you, but share a little bit of your own background. Then we've brought in a number of photographs of the Academy. And in its earlier incarnation as the Casa Italiana, we're going to talk about that. But share a little, if you would, for the people who may have missed the other program, your own background, and then we'll get into a discussion of the Casa Italiano and the Academy and your incredibly interesting life. But please share your background, where you're born and raised.
Actually, if I want to define my life, I would say I would define it with beyond. I was born in a beautiful little old Austrian resort, which became Italian after the First World War. And it was surrounded by the Alps, and I never broke through the Alps until I was 17. And I went to the university, but I was always longing to move beyond the Alps. So I chose Rome as the university in which I continued my studies. And in Rome, I studied classical philology and archaeology, looking
archaeology?
Archaeology also, looking beyond the war. The war made me look beyond. So I took so much beyond in different adventures during the war that took me close by to Alcide de Gasperi, who then became the first Premier of the Republic of Italy after liberation. He was then the Secretary of the Vatican Library. Through him, I got in touch with the Italian film industry.
Yes, indeed, in great...
And I met Fellini on that occasion. No, Fellini I didn't meet. Fellini, I met him in America. But I met Rossellini. And then...
Visconti?
Continuing with this beyond, the war made me look beyond because it was such a series of instabilities. I ended in a Gestapo prison. I certainly was looking forward to be liberated. So there came the Allies and the Americans among them. I married an American, and the American made me look beyond Rome and beyond Italy by watching what he was doing through 3 years in the border zone with Yugoslavia, which showed us the beginning of the Cold War. And finally, the beyond came beyond Gibraltar, through the Rock of Gibraltar and the Atlantic. I came to America on a Liberty ship called General Muir with 2,000 soldiers.
What year would that have been?
I was a war bride.
Uh-huh.
And there were about 5 or 6 war brides. We were not too many.
Mm-hmm.
And then in America, I had 23 years under fascism, and about 60 years in America, most of them at Columbia University. And Columbia University actually raised walls. I felt landlocked in this island of Manhattan and Columbia. So while at Columbia, I looked beyond Columbia.
Again beyond.
My idea was always to connect Columbia with the city, and I tried to do as much as possible, much before I thought of the Italian. I had the idea of the Italian Academy together with other scholars. I looked beyond my university to the Europe I have left beyond this time.
Right, you're a lot of beyond.
And I created within Columbia University a series of institutes. First was the Center for Medieval and Renaissance Studies, for which I got $400,000 from the National Endowment of Humanities in '76. And from the Medieval and Renaissance, I moved to Center for International Scholarly Exchange, that exchange between 1980 and 1990. Over 700 professors with European universities, mainly Italy, and through that particular process, I got close to the University of Rome, and the president of the University of Rome, who then became Antonio Ruberti, who then founded the Minister for University and Research in Italy, and he really taught me the trade. I worked for 10 years with him, exchanging professors from the University of Rome to Columbia. We even managed to get an archaeological dig for Columbia, the so-called Tomb of Aeneas. So we exchanged about 700 professors. When out of this came the Academy. How it came, I think it came as a product of the end of the Cold War, as it is shown in some of the pictures here that were taken in Warsaw. The final agreement with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, who is also the president of the Institute for Ciceronian Studies,
Cicero.
was arranged at the Congress of Cicero and the State, Cicero in Pastvo, to which I was invited, and I brought along the vice president of my university and my husband, who was already very ill. Having founded the Academy, having inaugurated the Academy in 1991, it wasn't, I had to look beyond by financial necessities, because Italy gave the 10 millions for the acquisition of the building, which is then...
We're getting a little ahead now, but okay, right.
It gave us the 10 million for the Academy, with which the endowment of the Academy for Advanced Studies was created. It was created on the $10 million that Columbia University invested. And when I resigned in 1996, we had a substantial endowment fund from the investment of that money. But at that point, we had to look for the money for the restoration and for the furniture of the new building. The original furniture, as I have shown you, was given by Mussolini.
Really? Yeah.
And we restored the Mussolini furniture. And then Poltrona Frau, a famous furniture company in New York, whose president's name was Erika, gave us $70,000 worth of magnificent furniture for the library that you have seen. Those
I have indeed,
And the armchairs on the last floor and some more furniture. Sam White was the American architect of the new building, and Franco Rota was the Italian architect, famous for its innovations at the Louvre in Paris.
All right, that's all really interesting. We got some photographs in there, but there's so many things in there that I could bring up. Like, for instance, I didn't realize that you had been in a prison camp at the end of the war. Or I don't quite understand.
In the Gestapo prison in Rome.
A Gestapo prison in Rome?
Yes.
How did that happen? I mean,
happened,
that's something I hadn't heard from
you
before.
know, because when you are in a besieged city for 9 months under military rule with General Kesselring governing you, and you have to hide all of your men. I was teaching Latin and Greek in a
You had done the
college.
philology, you had done the studies, and you were a professor, and then you hid men against. I mean, there's an interesting story in that. How did you happen to be in a Gestapo prison?
You know, each one of us had a profession, and at the same time, you were politically involved. I wasn't politically involved. I wasn't registered in any party, and I didn't even know the existence of parties. But
you were a scholar.
We all had to survive, and I was trying to hide all of our men that were taken away by the Germans, and in the process, we hid them in the catacombs, and then we hid them in the churches, and then we hid them in hospitals. And finally, there was no other place to hide them because the city was just so small. Fortunately, it
You're
has
talking Rome.
underground.
Rome.
Yes,
Rome,
it
yeah.
was Rome. So I had to look for false identity cards. Of the organization.
This is a whole
And
side that we didn't know about. Do you realize what a movie scenario you're setting up? What a fantastic movie that would make, and so
I
forth?
certainly did not think of a movie when I got.
You didn't think you were too busy
when I
doing it?
I didn't get involved in this because I wanted to.
No.
I wasn't a partisan. I wasn't a heroine. I was doing my humble work of teaching Latin and Greek to Roman students. And earning my life with an inflation that was stellar. So I wasn't looking really for that, but I ended up that we had to get them out of the hospitals, out of the catacombs, out of the churches, and they ended up at home. At home it was too dangerous. So we had to get them. We have to get them some form of identity cards in order not to be taken away by the Germans.
Taken away by the Germans?
Yes, the Germans were taking all men under 50 and making them work.
Really?
Making them work in whatever
in
was
concentration
necessary.
or work camp?
No,
work on construction projects or
if
something.
you try to escape, then they put you in a concentration camp. So I got this false identity card of the organization taught, and I had 4 men hidden at home with that card, and I make a long story short, I was arrested in my by teaching Latin and Greek. By teaching a Greek class on Euripides.
And you had to go to prison?
Yes. My sister and
How long did you have to be in
prison?
prison?
Fortunately, only about 4 weeks or a month.
4
because
weeks or a month.
That happened 1 month before the liberation.
This is a little thing that's just come up in an incredibly illustrious life that you've led that I know.
You didn't ask me how I was arrested. How they discovered.
How were you arrested, Maristella?
I was arrested because the organization, the party that was fighting against the Germans, they asked me to do something. So since I spoke German, I come from a German-speaking
That's right,
part
Tyrol,
of Italy,
yeah.
yes. They asked me to convince. We were surrounded by the front at 20 miles from the city. There was the front all over, and the soldiers were coming in and out to see the monuments or to cross the city to go north. So I was asked to approach German soldiers and convince them to desert. The partisan organization wanted to have arms and food from the army, from the German army. And so I hoped that no German would desert, but one night I had to speak with some Germans and ask them and tell them that the war, I was deeply convinced that the war was an error for everybody. I am against wars in principle. But that war was the stupidest war that one could think of. Engineered by Mr. Hitler and followed by that cretino Mussolini. I was against the war, but I was one of those quiet people that
teaching
don't go
Latin
to,
and Greek.
That we were not allowed to make demonstrations in Washington. We had to be. If you were against the war, you were in danger if you showed it. And I told quietly the German soldiers that the war was going badly, and there was a partisan organization that would help them would save them if they deserted. And I forgot about them. But one night, these 5 or 6 deserters showed up. They were actually not even German. They were Czechoslovakians and Poles. Only one spoke German. And my mother, who was horrified, she told me, "Get those Germans out." I said, "No, we got the cards through them, so we had to take." And I called several friends to help me to hide them because they couldn't stay in my apartment. And they had come with a truck full of arms and rice and cigarettes or something for the partisans. So I called up several people. Nobody wanted to help me. Finally, I called up the Gasperi, who then became the prime minister. The family of the Gasperi, we were friends because my grandfather, who is the hero of my book there, my grandfather had been a protector in Vienna.
I see.
In Trento and in Vienna. He was a representative, a congressman in Vienna. He was the protector of Alcide de Gasperi, who also come from my part, from my region up in the north. He became later the premier of Italy, but this de Gasperi was protected by the Vatican, and I got in touch with him, I told you before, because of my studies. So, Mr. De Gasperi had connections in Rome with the catacombs, etc., and he told me, bring them to the catacombs of Santa Priscilla. So at 2 o'clock at night, I go in a German truck with 3 German soldiers. Fortunately, I had a pass for the curfew because we were under curfew, but I was teaching private tutoring, so I had gotten a pass from the German. If they had stopped us, fortunately, they didn't stop us, and we got to the catacombs, which were on the other side of town.
To the catacombs?
The catacombs of Santa Priscilla, and we got the Germans in. Those catacombs were filled to capacity with deserters, with partisans, with I don't know what. And they told us everything okay if you bring food every day, because we don't have food. And I said, I have no food, but the organization will bring the food. So I got in touch with, I didn't know anybody in the organization.
You came to know them.
Who knows somebody else.
Yes, right. I think there's a lot of that in your life.
I like the organization, the partisan organization, you know, that the poor soldiers needed food every day. And lo and behold,
down in the catacombs.
After 3 weeks, the soldiers show up at my home during the day, dressed as civilians, telling me that they had no food, that I had to give them food. So my sister and I gave them food for 2 days, but we didn't have food for ourselves. We were all starving. It was a starvation, general starvation.
Your life
And so one day, without telling us anything, the organization, the partisan organization, never gave them anything. And one day, these poor guys, they put on their uniforms that they still had, and they went to get food, and they were caught. And actually, one of the first people that they said helped us.
Maristella.
Yeah, and my sister.
And your sister.
My younger sister.
The trouble with it is, Maristella, your life is incredibly too full, too rich to be able to be handled in a 1-hour program. We could do. That is a scene of a movie. Your life should be encapsulated within a movie. What a fantastic...
No, but this is the subject of my book.
All right, that's the subject of your book, Mom.
To this book.
And we want to let people know right at the outset that it's forthcoming. The 2nd volume to Mom and Her Village is forthcoming.
I'm looking for a publisher.
You're looking for a publisher, and it's well written. The 2nd one's already written. There's the 3rd that's well into, right?
Perhaps our common friend David Finn will...
Well, he might help, and there are others too. Somebody who's viewing in the publishing world might be well to be in touch. But listen, the problem is we don't have nearly enough time, because we could talk to you for 27 hours easy about how many different things. I know, we don't have 27 hours. And the thing we want to let people know, and you brought some pictures in about the Casa, about the Casa Italiana and the Academy, and talk to us a little bit about that. It's a building that's one of the most handsome buildings in New York. It's part of Columbia University. And maybe you could talk about that, and maybe we could weave it in with some of the people you've had an incredible connection with, intellectual leading lights of the world that you've had too. But could you talk a little bit about the building which houses the Italian Academy for Advanced Studies. It was called the
building,
Casa
as you
Italiana. And
can
we have
see.
some pictures to
Yes.
illustrate, no?
Yes,
Mm.
yes.
Okay. Now,
Uh,
let me take this. These are some pictures, right? And
these are-
the pictures of the building, maybe?
The pictures of the building. Here they are. I think that they are here. Yes.
This is the one?
Here
Okay.
is the
We
the
got a
one you're looking
portfolio
for.
you've kindly brought
Yeah.
along.
So here.
Okay, let me hold it up. I'm going to hold these up and let people
Yeah.
see them, and
This
then
is
you
the-
can come
this
in
is
on
the
these.
old building
Mm-hmm.
donated and built by Italian constructor. Mr. Paterno was the chief of them.
Mm-hmm.
In 1927 to Columbia University.
Mhm.
It was built on Columbia ground near 117th Street and Amsterdam Avenue
Mm-hmm.
and adjacent to other houses, Maison Française, Deutsches Haus and Casa Hispanica, which President Butler
Mm-hmm.
had built after the First World War
I see.
in order to enhance the studies of Europe
Right.
in our university.
And this would have been there, you said 1927, the original
In
structure.
1927, the Casa Italiana was the last of the building to show up, and
Of
it
these
was
cultural-
the biggest one of all.
Uh-huh.
So that when Columbia University
Mm-hmm.
built on that East Campus,
Mm-hmm.
the law school and the School of International Affairs,
Yeah, which are
she
now prominent.
destroyed 117th Street
Uh-huh.
towards Morningside Heights.
Uh-huh.
And those little houses, Deutsches Haus and Casa Hispanica and Maison
Française.
Française,
Uh-huh.
were destroyed
Uh-huh.
and were housed somewhere else. And the Casa Italiana was the only one to remain.
And it's
It
still
was
there?
the seat of the Italian department with the magnificent theater. It was, as it is, as Casa. It was the most beautiful building at Columbia.
Should we show
But,
some more pictures here or what? Should we?
Yes,
These?
this is the, no, this is
Okay,
the new building.
okay, this is new.
This is
huh?
the entrance to the old building.
This is the entrance to the old building.
Which I show it with pride because I have worked in it for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the library
Wait a
of the
minute,
old
we're
building.
going a little too fast. We have to get focused in on the picture. Can you come in
Yes.
on this and get it
And
straight?
this is the library of the old building.
That's the library of the, or this is the entrance to the old building,
The
no?
entrance to the old building.
Uh-huh. And then this one we'll put in
The
front
library.
of it. This is the library.
Yes, on the
Right.
4th floor of the
And
old
you've
building.
maintained that
on the
more
3rd
or less,
floor.
huh? Uh-huh.
And this is the theater, the
And this
Renaissance
is one of the most
theater.
handsome theaters in all of New York City. It's here. This is a theater that was part of the old building, Casa
Yes.
Italiana.
Yes.
And it's
this
still
is
there.
the project as they had it once.
This is the product as they had it
Yes.
once, as she
And
said.
I think that we have, that is everything that I have of the old casa here,
Mm-hmm.
but we have now the new
Okay, now
casa,
let's put these over
the
there.
Italian
okay?
Academy.
And we open this
Now,
upon the
we
new.
said before-
Now, this is Casa Italiana, and then you've had a hand in having this transformed into what is now called the
Exactly.
the Italian Academy for Advanced Studies
Yeah.
in America, which
You
you've
might
had a
ask me,
part.
yes, you might ask me how I got the idea.
I did ask you, how did you get the idea? How did you get the idea? And what we're showing now are some pictures of the transformed building. Is that correct, or have I
Yes,
got
which
I
is
missed
still
a
the
page?
most beautiful building at Columbia.
This might well be the most beautiful building in Columbia.
I think
Okay.
it has to be shown like
You
this.
want the top one or the bottom,
This
right?
is the outside, being a city landmark, could not be touched, so
Uh-huh.
only the inside, only half of the inside was modified.
Uh-huh.
And it was modernized by an Italian architect,
It's
Franco
gorgeous,
Rota,
yeah. Uh-huh.
and an American architect, Sam White.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it is a magnificent building, 7-story building,
Mm-hmm.
with a theater, which has been completely restored, beautifully furnished.
Are there two pictures here that we could
And
show?
no, these are the studioli.
Mhm.
There are the Italian Academy houses from 10 to 15 European scholars, and also some American, a year,
Mhm.
with special project
Uh-huh.
of an international.
Yes, we met some of them when we
Yes.
were there. These are scholars that are these are office
They
spaces.
are in all disciplines, sciences, social sciences, and humanities.
Uh-huh.
And we have now, I think, 12 or 13 young scholars,
Mm-hmm.
excellent,
In all fields of the humanities.
in all
right?
fields of the humanities.
Uh-huh.
There is a team in the choice of the scholars, but we are not going to go into detail.
These are, maybe we can go through these a little
This
quickly.
is
These are some of the more modern.
This is the top floor.
Mm-hmm.
The top floor with a beautiful terrace. This is a covered terrace that looks over Columbia,
Mm-hmm.
the whole campus of Columbia, because it's adjacent to the chapel,
Mm-hmm.
and it's in direct line with the chapel and with the low light.
St. Michael's Chapel. Is that St. Michael's, or what is it? What's the name of it? The chapel across Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have to move because
Okay.
here is the theater, the way it is right now.
That theater is so
Down
handsome.
This is the entrance.
Uh-huh.
This is the entrance, all marble floor
Mhm.
and special lamps, and this is the theater
Mhm.
with the gold roof
Mm-hmm.
and red velvet curtains,
Mm-hmm.
and the scene which I directed in my early years. I came to Columbia in 1951, and I'm still at Columbia. I
Yep.
have an office in this building.
Yes, indeed. You're still there, indeed. We want to get
So
through as
I
many of these
directed this theater, and we showed there the neorealistic film
This is, again, the library,
with
right? Here.
Bellini, Visconti,
Mhm.
Pontecorvo, Rosi, in the theater.
And all of, in the theater you show the films.
All
And
in
you've
the
been in
theater,
association
Pontecorvo,
with the...
we really launched neorealistic film in America.
Good for you. And you were in touch with the filmmaking industry, the Italian
Not
leading
the
lights.
industry. I was always in touch with the people.
With the people, right. That's right. I understand.
I
right.
was a good friend of Rossellini. I still am, and of Ingrid Bergman.
Mm-hmm.
And I,
Bergman also from
Ingrid
Sweden.
Rossellini had a PhD with me.
And you've come to be very friendly with Martin Scorsese, the modern.
And Martin Scorsese
Mhm.
presented his first film with us, and I think we have Martin Scorsese here. No, we have Martin.
We'll go through
Let
these
me-
quick.
yeah.
Well,
The
okay.
building, yes. They can
These are...
come and visit. This is the inauguration of the
Yes,
building.
by all means, go to visit. It's a magnificent
I
building.
think that
These
here
are,
you
these
have
are
the
some
view.
Of, okay.
a view of the building today.
Okay. Then this is the building on this side,
Yes.
the way it looks
This
today.
is the way it looks today, looking on Amsterdam Avenue between
It
the
hasn't
School
shown
of
yet
Law
on the screen.
and the School of International
No, wait, it
Affairs.
hasn't shown yet, Marcella. It's just coming in on. So that's the way it looks today, and it's now called the Italian Academy for Advanced Studies in
But
America.
now we show the filmmakers who came.
Okay.
I directed the theater, so let me show you in the old days,
Okay.
in 1950, 1960,
Mm-hmm.
I directed it
Yeah, I think I see a
with the
picture of
Donne
you.
Curiose
Let's show the picture of you
And you
quick.
can
This
have-
is Marcella as you were in a stage
as
play.
an actor and director, an
Uh-huh.
actress and director.
Uh-huh.
But I'm very proud to show here Maria Tucci,
Uh-huh.
who is a Shakespearean actress quite known right
Now,
now.
who is Marcella?
who I think
Demonstrate.
had
Where is she?
One
Can
of
you
her
show?
first performances.
Where?
on the
Who is the
famous
Tucci? Can you
theater.
show the
And
picture?
here is the whole group.
The whole play.
And then, excuse me,
Mm.
I think we have to put it up here.
Yeah.
Uh,
We're trying
um,
I
with
don't-
this looking beyond, I created, as I say, the Center of International Scholarly Exchange and the Medieval Center for Medieval Studies.
Mhm.
And here I directed the Congress on Italian Renaissance Theater.
Mhm.
Here are the scholars who participated. It was
Great.
all over the city.
Mm-hmm.
And we were all in costume for a great performance of the first play of Ariosto.
Mm-hmm. Now, which one are
And
we trying
here-
to show there? On my right? On
yes,
the right?
yes.
Let's see if we can we see
And
it? Or?
actually, this was another congress
Wait a minute.
on
Wait a minute.
Ariosto.
They're trying to show. Wait. Come back, because there's too much. They're not focused on it.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. This one. Now, this is.
This is
That's you.
Ariosto. This is a congress on Ariosto,
Okay.
in which we were all in costume to show
Okay.
you how the theater was used.
Okay.
And finally, here we come to the famous writers.
Mm-hmm.
This is the Consul General Traxler. This is Mandelbaum and
Mhm.
another writer.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
These are all great international
Yes,
scholars,
and
right?
here we have, and here we get to the filmmakers.
Mm-hmm.
Here we have Pontecorvo, who was with us for a whole month and
Uh-huh.
presented
That's
all
there
of
at the
his
bottom.
films.
And then, who is this here now?
And
Oh,
Rosie showed us
Oh, wait, let me hold that
Mattei.
up. Okay.
This is Jean-Maria Volonté
Mm-hmm.
in Il Caso Mattei
Mm-hmm.
by Rosi.
Mm-hmm.
Not only did we have the film, but we had seminars given on the film with specialists from the United Nations.
Wonderful.
So here
Wonderful. Good idea.
Jean-Maria Volonté
Mm-hmm.
came personally to speak at one
Okay.
of the seminars.
And here I'm not.
But I'm very proud to show Martin Scorsese.
There's
his
Martin
early
Scorsese,
youth.
young man. You've known him for a long time then.
He came, yes, he came with
That's as
a
a young
bus
man.
from Brooklyn. With his
Would that
whole
have been about the
family.
time of Mean Streets or when?
And you can see here, the whole family of Martin Scorsese.
Okay.
I am here. with
Which one? The
Martin.
top or the bottom?
And here is De Laurentiis.
Wait a minute. This is the top. The bottom is the Why do they keep? Why the bottom one is Scorsese family?
Scorsese
Yeah.
family.
And
yes.
then the other one on the
and
top
the other
will
one is
scroll
De
down.
Laurentiis with his son
De Laurentiis.
and the
huh?
cultural attaché
Uh-huh.
and the head of his film industry.
And you knew Fellini, right?
And I knew naturally there is Visconti.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I don't know
wait
where
a minute. Wait a
Visconti-
minute. Don't try and do it because they're trying to get a picture. Visconti is there. See, they have to focus
No,
on.
this is not Visconti. This
Yeah.
is a famous painter called De Luigi.
You've known them all:
painted on-
painters, writers, poets,
Yes, we feel-
scholars.
We filled that theater with an awful lot
We
of
filled that
activity.
theater with an awful lot of the intellectual leaders
This
of
is
the
the writer
Europe-
Moravia.
Moravia.
who we
Here's the
had
writer
for-
Moravia, right?
And
Here is
here is
the famous.
Oriana Fallaci.
He's Oriana Fallaci
And I
herself.
have Talise
That's
too.
this picture here.
Guy
don't-
Talise.
Don't block this. Guy
Yes,
Talise.
That's Oriana
Here's
Fallaci.
Fallaci, if you can get her. She's
But-
there. She was a great journalist and interviewer
And
extraordinaire.
she's a great writer, and
Mhm.
she's on trial right now.
She is for what?
Oh, yes, for asserting openly that the Europeans are giving up to Islam.
Ah, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's on
And
trial? On trial?
on
In
trial,
a political
yes.
trial? Huh?
She's on trial, and she has said publicly that she's very happy to be on trial. because she
To bring the
stands
issue
her
forth,
ideas.
huh?
This
Okay.
is Visconti.
We put this away now?
Yes.
Okay, let me
This
put
is
these away.
Luchino Visconti.
Uh-huh. Here's Visconti.
Luchino Visconti.
Uh-huh.
He presented Senso to us,
Mm-hmm.
and this it was published by a Barnard
College?
Journal, Barnard College Journal,
Uh-huh.
saying all roads lead to Rome, but in this case, in New York, they lead to the Casa Italiana.
That's really maybe true. Here's a picture where you make a joke, but
yes,
that's you.
that
You
was
made a joke when your
this is
daughter
my
was in
daughter,
jail or
yes,
something.
my daughter who worked for the New York Times for
Now
a
this
long
one,
time.
this is you here, the
Here
one
in
there.
Africa.
That's
Here
you.
is
You were in
myself
jail.
leaving for Africa to see her at the time of the Somalia War and the Rwanda War. And there,
Awful.
before then, she worked with the police in New York.
Mhm.
And I have this picture of myself visiting her in the Bronx.
That was
Where
that was a
happily-
joke. That was a joke, right? That was a
It
joke.
was a joke. They locked me in
But it reminded you of your time in the Gestapo
and
prison, maybe.
No, the Gestapo was a completely different affair, believe me.
Yeah, that was no joke.
No,
Yeah.
it was no joke.
And
no.
this is is this your resume? No, this is your
my
the
resume,
CV.
yes.
Look at this CV, ladies and gentlemen. What it is that these are.
Yeah, you know.
It goes on for. It's a book. It's an encyclopedia of the papers and the events that she's been involved in.
Yeah,
It's absolutely staggeringly
every
rich.
one of my colleagues has a CV which is longer than me, so we shouldn't be too impressed by the CV. But
I'm impressed by your life because every time I turn around, you come up with a whole new thing, which is like a whole new story to be told. You've been very, very active and had a very well-led life. Now, what other photographs might we show here that you brought these in? I really
think
appreciate
that
you
I
having
would
brought
like
them.
to show
Yes.
the picture
This
of
is a
my
pic.
husband.
Let's see. This is
My
the
husband-
Professor Lorch.
My second husband is
Yeah.
really
Okay, wait a minute.
the
We got
man of my life who
Yeah.
has.
That's Lorch, man.
Yes.
This is your
Professor
husband.
Lorch.
He was a great
famous
mathematician.
mathematician.
Uh-huh.
In functional, a specialist in functional analysis. Actually,
Mhm.
his specialty was the spaces of Banach.
Uh-huh.
He was really my strongest supporter
Mm-hmm.
in all our enterprises across the ocean.
Across
We
the
got
ocean.
married in 1956. In 57, our first daughter was born. I had a daughter from my previous marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And we immediately ran to Paris, where he lectured at the Collège de France, and we lived in Paris for a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, at that point, I followed him, and after a while, he followed me, so we followed each other.
Yes.
And the year before he died, he accompanied me when he was very, very ill to Warsaw,
for the
where Andreotti had invited him to help me in pushing through the agreement for the academy.
Yeah, that was in '89, I
Yes,
think, right?
that was in '89.
Okay, got some other things to show here?
This is the President of Colombia. No, these are things that we have already shown. We have already shown this.
Okay. But we've shown all that, and that's this is interesting. Your life is so incredibly interesting, and you've had an association with some of the great intellectual lights of the world, also some of the political lights of the world, and the Academy is a major feature of the Columbia University, and it's one of the most handsome buildings I've ever seen. I congratulate you on putting all that together.
That's perfectly true. Look, we should not speak of the world because I just deal with Europe.
Yeah.
I followed the Cold War from America, and that's the subject of my own book.
Yeah.
My forthcoming book. I followed the Cold War, and I became an American by looking at Europe and having to suffer Korea and Vietnam on this side.
Yeah.
I became an American a little of the time, as I wrote in the forthcoming article in Move for David Finn.
Yeah, and let me say that, if I may, if Marcel, you've just been accepted. We just heard today that your article, "The Fragility of Democracy," has been accepted for publication, I guess, soon in the movement in the journal Move, which is a publication of Rota Finn. And I congratulate you on that. And you've been associated with Rota Finn for some time, and David Finn. And you've been in good company. But this article you've written, maybe you could talk about that. The fragility of democracy is a huge subject.
We read Dante together.
Oh, you did?
With Michael Soven, the president of Columbia, at the time in which we were completing the agreement for the Academy. And with Rudolf Finn, whose company, Ruder and Finn, was the public relation of Columbia. We read Dante together.
You and David Finn?
Yes. And Michael Soven and his wife. But then Michael Soven was busy in many other things. But with David, we continue our Dante friendship, and we are still working on an hypothetical, hopefully real, potential book on Dante's light in Dante's Paradiso. He as a painter, and I will eventually help him with the rest, with the literary aspect.
Some of these photographs were taken by David Finn, if I'm not mistaken, of the Academy.
The Academy was taken by David Finn. The Casa Italiana, I don't know.
Those are from the past. Those are from the thing. Now, it's fresh in your mind because you've just written it. You've had a distinguished career, and you've been involved with all these people. But you've just written this article, so maybe it's worth talking, because what was the thrust of the article that you wrote? The fragility of democracy, growing out of your own experience. Maybe you could help talk to that.
The idea came to me because I'm giving a course at the Scarsdale School for Adults. I'm giving a course at the 92nd Y on Dante's Paradiso.
You are,
and on the Scarsdale on Euripides. Euripides' Helen. And the idea that Helen was not the cause of the Trojan War.
She wasn't?
No, she wasn't.
That was the face that launched 1,000 ships? No?
A plot of 3 gods had managed to create a phantom of Helen, who was kidnapped by Paris and taken to to Troy. And she, poor Helen, was transported by will of Zeus in Egypt, where she was supposed to stay until her husband came to pick her up. But her husband instead lived with the Phantom. And after the end of the Trojan War, dragged the Phantom on his way home. And he traveled for 7 years on the sea, like Ulysses. So the illusionary cause of a war, so many Trojans, so many Greeks, died for nothing. That gave me an idea. I was quite aware that the 5th century Greek history, first the Persian and then the Peloponnesian War, and American history of the 20th century up to right now, actually, 21st, a bit of the 21st, have tremendous analogies together.
Huh, interesting.
America, like Athens, was greeted as a liberator from a savior of democracy by the whole of Europe and by the East in Japan. And as Athens was greeted as liberator of Greece from the
Persian.
autocrats, the Persian autocrats. So at the same time, Athens started after the Persian Wars with hypocritically in the name of democracy, the Peloponnesian War against Greek cities. Most of them were oligarchies, with the idea of bringing democracy to those Greek cities. And that war not only ruined Athens, but ruined the rest of Greece. So with our war in Iraq, the parallel is quite clear. At the same time, while I was writing it, we had the flood of New Orleans.
Isn't this something?
The very
It's like
same
something
day,
biblical.
the
It's like
very-
biblical, yeah.
The very same day, something equally biblical happened in Baghdad. And we were equally responsible of what happened in Baghdad. There
What was
a
that?
stampede.
Of
A stampede
1,000
on
people?
the bridge.
Yeah,
1,000
incredible.
people,
Absolutely incredible.
945 people died then
Yeah,
and there.
in
And
a
the number was
stampede.
given that very day.
Yeah, I know. It was staggering.
And we are responsible for those 940 people that died. I don't say we are responsible for the Hurricane Katrina. We are responsible for
think
the
so?
levees that were not taken care of properly.
Maybe that was conjured up by
Katrina,
Osama bin
Katrina
Laden.
would have come anyway.
Yeah, right. That was a
Bush can-
force of nature beyond political human.
Yes, but
That's a theme
there
that
was.
comes up in mythology. and
We are
things like that.
challenged as a democracy. What are we going to do with New Orleans, and what are we going to do with Baghdad?
On both fronts.
And the point of my article is that New Orleans, as an American city, can appeal to a 1787 constitution, which is a magnificent open document, fortified by an army of amendments, whose first is the Bill of Rights.
It was
So
a
soon-
major document, don't you think?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So sooner or later, New Orleans will get something of what it deserves in a democracy. But poor Baghdad is at the mercy of our politics, or call it our generosity, because they didn't call us in. We went. We could have very well followed what Euripides calls logos. In Greek, it means word, discord, and reason. We could have followed democracy, and we were not even prepared for that war. We didn't know enough about the Iraq to start it. So much so that the real war started after our president declared mission accomplished. And when he appeared on that boat, I had to close television because he looked so much like somebody that I knew very well, and we had put an end of him during the Second World War. So
Benito?
Mussolini.
Yeah,
you know, that
Benito. He
mission
used to do like,
accomplished was
didn't
terrible.
he would do this,
Mission,
right?
mission accomplished was terrible. He should have never done it. No, everybody makes mistakes. I forgive him. He has also some good qualities. But that one, the real war started after mission accomplished. And I am astonished of what's happening. But
yeah, it
is beyond what answering your question.
No,
I really think that
is,
Baghdad, which is reduced like a medieval city, with a citadel where law and order reigns, and they wrote the constitution under American protection.
Yeah, by an
a
American.
constitution
yeah.
which feeds the insurgency.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Today, 26 people died.
Yeah, today, just today.
Just today, before
Yeah,
I left,
I
I
know.
heard it on the radio and I saw it on television.
You think they're analogs to the ancient Greek stories? Yeah.
But, you know,
Is it arrogance of power?
History repeats itself.
Uh-huh.
Like in us human beings, we have certain characteristics by which, by nature, we fall into the same errors. Not everybody is as lucky as Dante to get out of the forest and move toward paradise.
Yeah, right. We should all study Dante in the Inferno. But was Santayana, was it, who said that if we do not learn the lessons of history, we're doomed to repeat the mistakes of history, I think.
Yes.
And we seem to do it over and over again, don't we? You know?
But, you know,
I saw you, did you draw an analogy, or could you draw an analogy between Italy under somebody such as Benito Mussolini and what's emerging in the United States? Is there a danger that this will go over into something that is like the big F word, fascism?
I was born and raised under fascism. Literally, I lived in Italy.
You know what you're talking
about. From the birth of fascism to the death of fascism. I was there when Mussolini was killed, etc. But most important, I was in Rome on July 25th, 1943, which I will never forget, when the King of Italy, pushed by the Gran Consiglio del Fascismo, because if I think he would not have had the courage to do it on his own, he asked Mussolini to resign. That was an escape monarch in that time. Nobody could ask Hitler to resign.
No, yeah.
But Hitler was a completely different character.
If not all fascisms are equal, right? I mean, Hitler was fascistic.
No, there is that beautiful
Mussolini
book
was
by my colleague and neighbor Robert Paxton on the anatomy of fascism, and he proves that fascism was the product. Communism was born during the First World War in 1917, the revolution, 1917.
Yeah.
And fascism was born all over Europe in different places immediately after the First World War, as a reaction to the problems that the First World War had created.
It had created, and also a very bad conclusion in the Treaty of Versailles, don't you think? Was it a political thing, a very badly thought through idea of forward movement of a civilization and short-term vengeance?
We can never thank enough Roosevelt and among others Marshall for the Marshall Plan.
Marshall Plan.
The fact
we need
that
a Marshall Plan for the world.
They did not destroy part of Europe. You know, the punishment of Germany after the First World War, reducing Germany to absolute poverty. And
created a ground for Hitler to emerge.
Created a vacuum.
The hatred,
Yes.
I wonder if we're going to do the same thing in Iraq. Maybe the analogies don't hold, but...
I don't think we are... I think that the Middle East is something completely different. First of all, the Middle East... both Germany and Italy had known democracies. They were democracies before Hitler and Mussolini came around.
Beethoven, Brahms, Herder, Goethe, I mean, you know, it was a civilization, a high civilization that had been built.
They were democracies.
Yes,
and therefore the people could be led to a democracy. Democracy is not only the most fragile of all possible governments, but it is also a government, because of its fragility, that requires education, requires constant sun. I remember that I use a simile in my article, like a flower that is easily bent by an early spring cold night. Democracy is not enough to sign for a constitution or to declare we want to be democratic. You have to give time to people to grow, to be educated, to have enough sun to let the flower bloom into bloom and give fruit. And I don't think that anywhere in the Middle East
Yeah.
there is such possibility. That's
No.
the sad, tragic condition of that part of the world.
Okay, so it would be that part of the world. Is the world? We used to have in the 19th century. We had a year of since Columbus, and this was dedicated on Columbus Day, 1927.
Yes. And
Columbus started off
when
a
I
whole
was
new
director,
thing.
I was director of the Casa for 6 or 7 years, just director. I worked even when I was not a director, but as a director, I promoted the book of all the books on Colombo.
Columbus.
Colombo, yes.
He's going to get confused
yes,
with the
yes, and
famous
I wrote
detective on television.
I
But we're
I
talking
had
about
to
the real
speak on-
thing.
yeah. But going back to the fragility of democracy, Italy and Germany, in a reasonably short period of time, because of the far sight view of a Roosevelt and of a Marshall, they could truly become democracies. And Europe has
And Japan.
even,
And Japan.
and Japan is miraculous.
Yeah.
And Japan didn't have a precedent, but it managed. It's a completely
An
different
emperor,
civilization.
yeah. They were industrial
You see-
developed. They were industrially developed.
Yes, they were
modernized.
They were modernized and industrially developed, and they accepted the free market. So democracy is also not the same for everybody. It is the law of the people, but people have different cultures, and the Europeans are more or less, although they are very different. The different countries have a different culture, but they have the possibility. They have a way of conceiving of a government which has analogies, even with Eastern Europe, which right now is considered backward, and it is backward. But if you speak of France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Austria, Switzerland, England, obviously.
Yeah.
England is in between Europe and America.
And the Scots.
And the
The Scottish Enlightenment was a good
you
part.
can see that they have so much in common, in spite of their differences, that they can accept democracy as a way, the logos, which is at the basis of democracy, was born in Europe, and it was practiced. After all, France had the first great revolution, the French Revolution. But
we had a revolution a little bit before the French here, and that was informed by the Scottish Enlightenment. That 60% of the signers of the Declaration of Independence were Scots, and then that informed and inspired Les Miserables of France, and they cut off Louis XVI's head.
But the whole of England has a fantastic civilization.
Yeah, but the point being, in a certain sense, we had that. We had the European, after Columbus, 500 years of European expansion, culture, ideas that came, and there was an Enlightenment. There was the Scottish, the French Enlightenment, and it went out. Then we colonized the world, remember, and that only just ended after the Second World War. We had colonized the world, and we had the idea of the white man's burden. Is there a white man's burden, a European burden, to put their system upon the world? Or is there a problem, is the model the United States presents to the world, and it's trying to present in Iraq, neoliberal notions of organization, that sort of thing? Or is there an arrogance of power on the part of the United States of America, thinking that they can impose their will upon all the world? And is there a danger of a massive reaction by the world against the arrogance of power being exhibited by the United States? And where do we stand in terms of the current administration? And if there are these violations of fundamental principles and so forth, how far do we go in retribution? Could you sign a petition to think about investigating impeachment or anything like that, as far as the administration that seems to have taken over this country? Or where do you stand in terms of that, having lived through a fascistic thing that happened in Germany and in Italy? Don't mean to put you on the spot.
I am against extremes.
Oh,
and I am
sorry to have presented one.
I am for the maximum use of logos as discourse and as reason. And I think that impeachments are extremes. We should have, within our system here in America, we should find ways to convince the party which now dominates, which is in power and silences everybody else.
Remember,
we should find ways to convince them that this is not good for ourselves and it is not good for the world.
Isn't there a danger? Hitler was voted in. He was voted in an election, a democratic. He was voted in, and then it gets to a certain point where if there's not vigilance, and so it can get past the point of no return. Do you think we're in that danger now, the United States of America, in imbalance between the powerful and the weak on a world and national scale?
Think so.
You know, we're not there yet. But you're concerned about the state of things.
I don't think so. I'm not concerned about that.
Oh, you're not.
I was really excited and astonished at the discussion, at the dialogue between Roberts, John Roberts,
oh, you've been following,
and
the committee
and the senators. And I think that we can have a conservative who can view somebody else's point of view and accept it. And I think that Roberts convinced me that he could eventually be the man, although we risk it, but I think that he could. He could be the man.
To be
that we do have that possibility here in America. I don't think that I was too young when 1933, when Hitler took power. And I was born at the time in which Mussolini took power, so I was not involved. I studied history. But living under Mussolini, as I wrote in my article, I always had the impression that we had no crisis, because we had no way to express any opinion. And this is certainly not so in America.
Okay, we do have some, one of which is, I'm sorry, we could go on talking for hours and hours. We've run out of time. I can't believe it's gone so fast. It's been your pleasure. Happy to have presented her perception. We want to get the credits up and the contact information for you. Thank you, Maristella, for coming in.
Welcome.
It is an absolute, as always, an absolute delight to talk with you on 1,000 different subjects which get very, very nuanced and very interesting. Congratulations on the Academy and on the work. We'll all look for the article coming up, Fragility of Democracy, and your thoughts. Thank you really very much for such a well-led life that continues in a stellar pattern. And I thank you really very much for coming in. Sorry we've run out of time. Your pleasure to have had her perceptions. We invite you to tune in. We'll come back again tomorrow. That's it for this particular program, and altogether just too abbreviated glimpse into the life and times of Maristella, which is a very exciting and interesting panorama that she presents. I'll tell you, you just cannot lose talking with Maristella Lorch. And thank you very much.
You're welcome.
See you again tomorrow. So I'm sorry.